We just saw Giannis put up a historic performance in the NBA Finals to give the Bucks their first championship in 50 years. But how do you pronounce his last name?
Giannis Antetokounmpo.
Try again, Shaq.
Giannis Antetokounmpo.
Was he right, Giannis?
No, Shaq.
Okay, how about Jeff Van Gundy?
Antetokounmpo. What? I'm trying.
Well, at least you're trying, Jeff. Maybe less famous announcer?
Attokounmpo.
Well, that went in the wrong direction. How about you, Mr. President?
Antetokounmpo.
All right, we're getting there. In this video, we're going to try and clear up some of the confusion about how to pronounce Giannis' name and explain historically from a Greek perspective why it is spelled so strange. Πρώτα απ' όλα, συγχαρητήρια στον Γιάννη. Now, as a researcher of historical Greek phonology, it's not very often that my field of expertise intersects with contemporary culture. But today, it does. So let's get into it. Now, the Greek freak's last name is not actually Greek in origin, but rather it's Yoruba. And Yoruba is a language spoken by the Yoruba people in West Africa, mainly Nigeria. Now, in Yoruba, the name is pronounced as Antetokounmpo. Antetokounmpo. And it means something like, the crown came from over the sea. So how do we explain how this name came to be spelled the way it is in Greek and then eventually in English? Well, in order to understand the spelling of the name Antetokounmpo in Greek and in English, we have to go back into ancient times about 2,000 years and look at a couple things that were going on in the Greek language. So the first thing, if you look at these letters, you might know them as beta, gamma, delta, and think of them as being pronounced as b, g, d. And that was true in the earliest times in Greek. But over time, give or take around 2,000 years ago, these sounds started to be softened. Linguistically, we say fricativized. So that instead of being b, g, d, they became v, g, th, right? And then v, g, th. So instead of pronouncing beta like B as in boy, you pronounce it as V as in voice. And instead of gamma as in goat, you pronounce it as G like ugh. And then delta instead of D as in dog as V as in the. Now, after this change happened, you might wonder, well then was there still a B, G, D sound in Greek? Well, there was, but it wasn't from these letters anymore, because these letters then symbolized V, G, th. And that brings us to our second phenomenon that was going on in ancient Greek at the time, the weakening of nasals. Now, what's a nasal? A nasal is just a consonant, a sound you make that goes through your nose when the air comes out. M and N, M and N. These are nasal consonants. They go through the nose. Now, in certain contexts, they started to be pronounced weakly to the point where they weren't even heard at all or said at all in certain contexts, like at the end of a word or before a stop consonant. Now, a stop is anything that you make when you stop the airflow, like b, p, k, d. All of those are stops. So take, for example, the word pente, which in classical Greek means five. Now, over time, that n sound in the middle there started to fall out and no longer be pronounced. But it didn't leave without a trace. In fact, what it did when it sort of disappeared, elided out of the word, is it left a bit of a residue on the following consonant, the t. And what it did is it would make that following consonant be pronounced with voice instead of voiceless. Now, what does that mean, a voiced consonant or a voiceless consonant? Well, if you hold your finger over your vocal cords when you're speaking, you can hear if it vibrates or not. So if you say t, 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 there's no vibration because it's voiceless. But if you say d, 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 you'll feel the vibration because it's voiced. So that word pente, after the n sound kind of starts to fall out and get weakened, can voice the following t, right? So it becomes pende or pede, something like that. And we even have an ancient inscription which spells the word like this, the equivalent of English, P-E-D-E. And so that was going on in Greek, and the same thing was happening in the sequence M-P or M-P, so that the M could get weak, and then the P, voiceless, would come to be pronounced as B, 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 with voice. And as the centuries progressed, these sequences then came to be associated with the sounds D and B. And if you remember, we said that already 2,000 years ago, we're starting to see the process where B, G, D start to be pronounced as V, G, V. So Greek doesn't have a D and a B sound anymore with just one letter. So after all these changes happen, this sequence nt and mp become the best sequences in Greek to represent D and B. And these sequences end up actually being the normal way for transliterating or transcribing a foreign name into Greek. So, for example, if you go to Greek Wikipedia to look at David Beckham's page, you'll see his name spelled like this, which is the equivalent of this in English. Now, I'm sure we can all be thankful that his name didn't come to us spelled in English from Greek, so that the commentators weren't talking about Ntevint running around the football pitch.
Beckham? He's done it! Ntevint Beckham!
But you get the point. So if you look then back at Giannis's name and think of its Yoruba origin, Antetokounmpo, and you map it onto the Greek English spelling, you'll see that that NT corresponds with the D, and that MP corresponds with the B. And that's how it ended up being spelled the way it is in Greek and eventually English. It's not strange, it's just representing the Nigerian, the Yoruba name in the Greek way. Now, once a name comes into another language, it can have sort of a life of its own, right? And you can have, a Greek pronunciation of it, an English pronunciation of it, and then the original Yoruba pronunciation of it. And these things can be flexible, right? I think even Giannis himself acknowledges that there's flexibility with his name.
The Nigerian way, you gotta say with a D, so it's Antetokounmpo. But in the Greek way, you say with the NT, like Antetokounmpo. So I changed it myself. Like, I don't think there is a way you gotta say the last name. Whatever you gotta just say, it's Giannis Antetokounmpo.
But at least now, you know why his name is spelled the way it is.